I've been stabbed twice. It comes with the territory.
Just stating the obvious.
You need to just chill out, man. You need to just chill out.
Hello, happy Friday. I'm Sophie McNeil and you're listening to Hack on Triple J. Gender wars, misogyny and sexism. Were you cheering this week as this debate raged in Canberra, or were you groaning? Tonight we're giving you the chance to have your say. We're going to have two federal pollies live in the Hack studio, and you can let them know what you reckon about the whole hoo-ha. You don't want to miss this one. Now, if you were watching federal parliament this week, you'd conclude that sexism is a big issue in modern Australia. On Tuesday, the Prime Minister Julia Gillard delivered a passionate speech in Parliament. She called the Leader of the Opposition, Tony Abbott, sexist and misogynistic, and it went viral around the world. So I want to hear from you. What did you make of the Prime Minister's speech in Parliament this week? Were you stoked to see her stand up for women? Or do you agree with the opposition and think that the PM was unfairly playing the gender card? Give us a call, 1300 055536. That's 1300 055536. Or text us 0439 75 7555. We'll get your opinion in just a moment, but first, Hack's Julia Holman put on her flak jacket to give us this frontline report from Canberra's gender wars.
I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny by this man. I will not. And the government will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny by this man. Not now, not ever.
Whatever your political persuasions, you couldn't help take notice of Julia Gillard's fiery speech to Parliament.
I was offended too by the sexism, by the misogyny of the Leader of the Opposition catcalling across this table at me as I sit here as Prime Minister.
This Prime Minister should be ashamed of herself. She should be ashamed of her choice. She should be ashamed of her judgment. She should be ashamed of the fact that she is now having to defend the indefensible.
I was offended when the Leader of the Opposition stood next to a sign that described me as a man's bitch. I was offended by those things. Misogyny, sexism, every day from this Leader of the Opposition.
You knew that it was like, wow, okay, this is a really special day.
Jacqueline Maley's a Sydney Morning Herald journalist, and she was watching it in the press gallery.
When Gillard got up, it was very much one of those rare moments in Parliament when you knew you were witnessing something quite extraordinary, and you know that she had real fire in her belly this time, and she was, you know, the brakes were off. So it was quite an extraordinary moment. It was very gripping to watch. Yeah.
But the focus of the day soon slipped in another direction to this guy.
I wish to advise that with great sadness I have decided that I should not continue as your Speaker.
Peter Slipper resigned as Speaker of the House following the publication of his private text messages. In one message, he called Liberal MP Sophie Mirabella an ignorant botch. We assume that's autocorrect fail for bitch. In the other text message discussing the appearance of female genitalia, he compared it to a mussel removed from its shell.
I believe that given the controversy which has occurred in recent times, that it's in the interests of the Parliament that I should take the course of action that I have personally chosen to take.
The PM's diatribe went viral. It was plastered on Facebook walls, trending on Twitter, and received write-ups internationally, including in The New Yorker and Jezebel. But it was the apparent hypocrisy of this speech,
I was offended,
while protecting this guy.
The importance and the role of the House of Representatives in Australia is far more important than my own continuation as Speaker.
That most of the Canberra press gallery focused on. Jacqueline Maley again.
Political journalists, by and large, did their job and so looked at it in a political context, which is their job. Parallel to that, Gillard's speech was just being went viral very quickly on its own and sort of stripped of context in that we just saw the speech. So people were seeing it on websites and stuff, just the video, and it was like, wow, that was amazing. It sort of became this symbol of like, for every woman who's ever had a boss or a, I don't know, an uncle or someone who just treats them in a sexist and disgusting way. And I'm not saying that's what I think about Tony Abbott, but it became greater than the sum of its parts, if you know what I mean. It became a symbol which transcended the political moment of the day.
Julia Gillard's brought up sexism before. In August, she told a press conference that she'd been the victim of online abuse for years by bloggers.
For many, many months now, I've been the subject of a very sexist smear campaign.
But it's the first time we've seen a full-on debate about whether sexism is alive and well in Australia, and everybody's weighing in. The new Speaker, Anna Burke, says sexism's still a major problem in the workplace and in Parliament.
We've come a long way, but we also haven't. And I think nowadays it's get over the gender and look at the individual and their ability.
But Deputy Opposition Leader Julie Bishop is standing by the Opposition Leader.
The Prime Minister is now using gender as a shield against any criticism of her performance, her honesty, her competence.
The issue got very murky when it was revealed at a union dinner in Canberra on Wednesday night that a comedian made an offensive remark about Tony Abbott's female Chief of Staff. Deputy PM Wayne Swan was giving the keynote address to the conference, and it was only the next day when he rang to express his concern.
Well, I didn't want to give it oxygen, and I think in retrospect it would have been better if I did.
But the Opposition Treasurer Joe Hockey says it's clear hypocrisy.
Labor's got some explaining to do. They're trying to set a new benchmark. They can't hold that benchmark themselves. What a surprise.
On the same day that Gillard gave her blistering speech, a group of women gathered outside of the Parliament protesting a law that will cut their single-parent payments by up to $100 a week. 85% of the people who will have their income slashed are women. And according to them, neither Labor nor the Coalition are standing up for them.
I don't think they really have anything useful to add. They're exactly the same. There's no difference.
That was Julia Holman reporting there from the front line of the Canberra gender wars. And we've got a few comments on the Hack Facebook page today. Rob says both sides of politics are using it in their own way. Labor makes every attack re the PM about her sex, not her performance. Will thinks Gillard was right to call out Abbott and the Coalition. And Louise writes, a male in Julia's role with identical policies would not cop as much shit as she does as a woman. So let me know what you reckon. Send us a text 0439 757 555 or call in 1300 055536. Were you cheering when Gillard made that speech this week, or were you groaning? Let us know. And in this Hack studio tonight, we have Kelly O'Dwyer, a Liberal Member of Parliament from Victoria. How are you, Kelly?
Pretty good, Sophie.
Big week in Parliament. Thanks for joining us. I've also got Gai Brotman here, a Labor MP from Canberra. How are you, Gai?
Very well, thanks, Sophie.
Now, Gai, a misogynist is someone who hates women. That's the definition. Why do you think Tony Abbott hates women?
Well, I think that that's the very literal interpretation of misogyny, but I think that it is more than that. It is where there's a double standard applied to women, and that is definitely the case in public life, in public discourse at the moment, and that's what the Prime Minister raised. She raised a very important issue about sexism in public life and public discourse.
But hating women? I mean, you really think that's a big call to go from saying, look, he's made comments that you regard as sexist in the past to go...
I don't sit opposite the Prime Minister, the Opposition Leader, Tony Abbott. The Prime Minister does, and she called it as she saw it.
Kelly?
Well, I certainly don't think that you should bandy about the word misogynist like confetti. I think it's a really serious charge to say that somebody is a woman hater, and nobody has provided any evidence that Tony Abbott is a woman hater. In fact, I think what's been lost in all of this discussion about Julia Gillard's speech and sexism and, all the allegations is the fact that when she made her speech, there was a motion before the Parliament about getting rid of Peter Slipper as the Speaker. We were saying that he was not a fit and proper person based on published comments that he had made, sexist text messages that he had sent to a former staffer. We said it was not appropriate he be Speaker, and she stood up there and rather than defend him, because she knew she couldn't defend him, defend the indefensible.
But let's go back to your leader, though, because that's what we're discussing, whether it is fair for the Labor Party to call him a misogynist, someone who hates women.
Well, absolutely not. I mean, I think it is an outrageous, very malicious smear. I think there is true misogyny that exists in the world. You know, we saw an example of it this week. I gave a speech in the Parliament this week about a 14-year-old Pakistani girl who'd been shot for riding a bus to school to try and get an education. She'd been shot by the Taliban for demanding her right as a young woman to be educated. Now, that is true misogyny. All of this rubbish that is being spouted about Tony Abbott being misogynist is really simply a political campaign that's being run against him. Its gender's being used as a political weapon, and I think people are really jack of it.
Can you understand,
I
Kelly?
disagree entirely. I mean, the thing is that the Prime Minister called it as she saw it, and also raised a very important issue, and that is sexism in public life and public discourse at the moment. I mean, Kelly, you would have been a victim of it. I've certainly been a victim of it, and it's infected public discussion. I mean, the emails that we get, the phone calls we get, it's just extraordinary. I mean, just look what happened to the Prime Minister this week with the Facebook comments.
What do you mean, Gay, when you say that you've been a victim of this? Tell us.
Well, I mean, I'm sure Kelly's had all sorts of foul and vitriolic emails based on her gender, as have I. I mean, about a few weeks ago, I was talking on the super trawler issue and got a phone call to the Parliament House office from a man in Perth, not complaining about my position on the super trawler, but the fact that I was a woman speaking on the issue. I've had men coming into my electorate office complaining about the fact that I'm a woman and that the Prime Minister's a woman and just standing there screaming. It's really common, and I've been staggered by it. I've only been in since 2010. It's a very short time I've been in, and all the people I've been speaking to who've been in for 20 years and more have commented on how the tone and pitch of public discourse and Parliament at the moment is at the lowest ever.
Kelly, have you received any treatment like that? Do you think there's truth to what Gay's saying?
Well, look, I think true sexism can exist in any workplace, but you know, the idea that somehow public discourse has reached a new low now, certainly I think the Parliament, no question, is at a new low now, but the idea that somehow, you know, this is all new language that's being bandied about. I mean, who can forget Mark Latham, who was the former Labor leader, you know, said the most vile and repugnant things about women journalists being skanky hoes, and yet the Labor Party made him their leader. They actually wanted him to be Prime Minister. So let's not get too confected in our outrage about some of the comments that have been bandied about. Frankly, I think, you know, I'm a strong and proud feminist.
As women in politics, Kelly,
well, hang on, Gay.
We should get outraged.
I'm a strong and proud feminist, you know, and I think I should be judged according, you know, to my abilities, and I think performance really at the end of the day should count for everything.
Well, let's hear what the Triple J... Sorry, I just want to hear what the Triple J listeners thought about what happened in Parliament this week. Amir, you're a bit disappointed in this debate.
I mean, I can't believe that these guys, they're meant to be running this country, and they're here bickering about what he said, what she said. And I mean, another thing that I believe is sexist is how come, you know, females can call themselves, you know, female activists or whatever, but if a guy does that, it's wrong. You know, how come there's such a put down on males trying to stand up for themselves, but if a female abuses a male, that's not sexist. But if a male abuses a female, that's sexist.
I think you're absolutely right to say that there is a real double standard that exists in language here, and we have to be very, very careful about how language is used, because language is really powerful. And where language is used, like the term misogynist, to try and silence people, you know, I think that's wrong.
I mean, I want to go back to Amir for a second there. Amir, what did you think of Gillard's speech this week? How did you feel when you watched that?
I was actually, like, I'm a Liberal supporter, and even if Tony Abbott was a female or whatever, I believe the Liberals' views are right. So I couldn't believe that, you know, what was said in the Parliament would have anything to actually even stand on, because they're not there to bicker about things like this. They're there to run a country.
We have heard a lot of complaints this week saying there's too much bickering going on. So thanks so much for the call, Mark. I'm going to go to Dale here. Dale, you didn't like something that Tony Abbott said this week.
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot of talk about what Julia Gillard said, and it seems to have taken away from the use of Tony Abbott's terminology when he was using the word shame. And after the controversy with Alan Jones, and I've heard interviews saying that it was just, you know, it wasn't planned. Well, I fail to see how it wasn't planned. Tony Abbott is constantly a negative person, and look, he's probably thought that it had died down a bit for him to use it. And Julia Gillard's had a very hard time of late, and I'm not in favour of either of the parties, but Julia Gillard's been under a lot of pressure, and look, he's constantly negative towards her and everything she does. So, the fact that we've forgotten the disgusting terminology that Alan Jones, or what Alan Jones said, and that Tony Abbott just kept going with it. It's terrible.
Dale, thanks so much for the call. And I want to go to Kelly here. Kelly, because, yes, Tony Abbott did get in trouble for saying that this week, but the Prime Minister also raised other comments that Tony Abbott has made, some going back as far as 1998 this week. And it relates to why people say that, or accuse your leader of sexism. For example, he has said a young woman's virginity is the greatest gift you can give someone. He also this week asked, when is the Prime Minister going to make an honest woman of herself? Does he dig a hole when he says things like this, Kelly? Do you just slam your hand on your forehead and say, it's not a good look when your leader's saying stuff like that?
Well, Sophie, I don't. And I'll tell you why. Because when Tony Abbott talks about whether Julia Gillard is an honest person or not, or an honest woman, because she is a woman, I mean, it's a fact, she's actually a woman. The reason he talks about that is because, the Prime Minister says one thing and does something completely different. It goes to her performance. It goes to her judgment.
But can you understand why he opens
Tony
himself
Abbott says that? No, I don't.
To accusations?
I think I think it's entirely reasonable for Tony Abbott to question the Prime Minister about her performance. I mean, let's not forget, before the last election she said there wouldn't be a carbon tax. Then the second she got elected, she brought one in. So it's about her integrity. It's about whether or not, as Prime Minister, she does what she says she's going to do. It's entirely appropriate. And I think for her to try and hide behind the fact that she is a woman, to not be criticised or scrutinised.
But what about when Tony Abbott has said things like, what if men are by physiology or temperament more suited to exercise authority or to issue commands? That is a direct quote from Tony Abbott. He makes it easy to attack him for being sexist when he says things like that, or he says abortion is the easy way out.
Exactly.
But do you know what we can talk about? We can talk about comments taken out of context 20 years ago. I mean, the fact is, last night it was revealed late in the day, and it was in today's papers, that there was a very, very vile comment made about Tony Abbott's Chief of Staff at a CFMEU function attended by a number of very senior ministers of this government, including the Treasurer, who delivered a speech directly after it. There was no condemnation, none whatsoever.
The Prime Minister came out and condemned it.
Entirely hypocritical.
Gay, I want to go to Gay here, because Gay, you guys have set this really high benchmark now. Every time someone says something that can be construed as being, sexist, then they're going to jump on you guys because you're championing the cause.
What we're championing is the fact that we need to focus on policy and not gender. That's what we. I
agree with you entirely on that, Gay. I think that's exactly right.
But the thing
that's
is,
what you want as a female politician. That's what I want as a female politician, Kelly.
But Gay, you guys open yourself up to criticism that you're hypocritical when you say, we're going to stand up for women, but then you don't call for Slipper's resignation over his weirdo text messages about female genitalia. And on the same day that Gillard's standing up for women, there's single mums out the front of Parliament protesting cuts that your government's making right now to sole parents. So can you see how you guys now are really open to accusations of hypocrisy?
Well, I think that the Prime Minister, in terms of the focus was on those sexist comments, and that is what the Prime Minister focused on in that discussion in Parliament. What those other issues in terms of Peter Slipper, I'm happy to deal with that. In the fact that those comments that Peter Slipper made were appalling, but what we were arguing in Parliament was a matter of principle.
Look, I'm going to go
waiting for the judge to decide that Parliament was not a kangaroo court.
Hey guys, I'm going to go to a Triple J listener here because I want to hear more about what they thought, because who knows, is this strategy going to backfire on the Labor Party or on Tony Abbott? I've got Steve here. Steve, what do you reckon about what's happened this week?
I think it's been really fascinating this week. I absolutely loved the speech. I watched it 4 times that evening, the whole speech all the way through. I wrote to the Prime Minister, said that she rocks. And what is just really strange, I can't stand all of these women, professional politicians coming out and sort of and not supporting Julia Gillard calling out sexism and misogyny. And yes, misogyny is a very serious thing, and a 14-year-old girl getting shot in the head, Kelly was sort of mentioning that and making light of the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister shouldn't call out sexism and misogyny unless she gets shot in the head.
Look, I'm going to give Kelly the chance to respond to that, Steve.
Well, Steve, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying let's not forget the context here. I mean, Gay was talking about the fact that she thought that what Peter Slipper had said and done was absolutely vile. But
yes,
yet the Prime Minister,
but
it wasn't called out because they voted to retain him. They said he was a fit and proper person to still be Speaker. So they could either stand up.
That's a completely different thing, Kelly, and I'm glad that the caller acknowledged that.
Thanks so much for your call, Stephen. Guys, we're going to switch gears a little bit now because we wanted to ask the Triple J audience if they think this debate is still relevant to them in their life today. It's 2012. Do you think that misogyny and sexism is still a big problem in Australia? Or do you feel that what's been happening in Parliament this week is not relevant to your life? So both the guys and the girls, call in on this one, 1300 055536. That's 1300 055536, or text 0439 757 555. Hack's Loretta Florence speaks to a few young high achievers to hear how relevant they think these gender wars are on their life.
I did grow up in the city and then decided to pursue my passion in agriculture. So I basically moved to the country and took up an agriculture degree.
Elise Wendon is a farmer, a businesswoman, a mentor and a finalist in this year's Victorian Rural Woman of the Year. As a former city girl, she noticed she was entering a man's world.
Farming is a male-dominated environment. It has been traditionally, and just by way of transfer of farm assets, usually a farm is transferred through successive generations to the son. That's how it has been in agriculture.
But she says she's good at what she does, so men don't give her any crap.
If we start to sort of get into woman versus man, it takes away from the skills and the ability. I work side by side with men in my industry, with my partner. We work really, really hard. For me, it doesn't come down to being a woman or being, less able or more able as a man. It does come down to what I can offer and what I can provide, and I'm happy in knowing that I can provide just as much as my partner and I can contribute to the business as a whole.
I thought I'd ask a guy if women still get discriminated against.
I'm Matthew Keneally, comedian and founder of Political Asylum.
Matthew tells me Julia Gillard's speech was fabulous. And he says women today do still have a tough time of it.
Ultimately in society we still have an idea of gender roles, and within that is an idea that we're not familiar or comfortable necessarily with women exercising authority and power. Or even when they are, we're not familiar and comfortable with them exercising it in the same way as men do. I think most people in the workplace would say that when women are authoritarian, they find it uncomfortable, whereas when men do it, it's accepted. Now, that's not to say everyone's a misogynist or a sexist, but I think that does affect the way women's possibility for advancement and the way they are treated in the workplace and the way someone like Julia Gillard is treated.
So do you yourself feel uncomfortable when a woman acts like that?
So what you're asking me is Matthew, you've come on Triple J, are you a misogynist?
Are you, Matthew?
Well, I hope not. I really do. I hope not. I'm filled with lots of middle-class guilt. I worry quite a lot, whether I am or not. I like to think I've had women bosses and male bosses, and I've been happy with both of them, but I think without being value-laden about it, I think I probably respond to women in authority differently to the way I respond to men in authority. As a child, I was made to be more familiar with men exercising authority. So I hope I am fair to all of my superiors, be they male or female, but I think we probably do treat women and men differently in those roles.
Hi, my name is Alice Pung, and I work as a legal researcher, and I also work as an author.
Alice Pung is being modest. She doesn't just work as an author. She's written 2 books and edited 1, and won a truckload of awards for them.
Anyone who says that there's no such thing as, feminism or no such thing as discrimination against women anymore have blinkers over their eyes.
She reckons where she works now is great, but she has been on the losing side of the gender war before.
Your boss might tell a joke, and if you're a female, you're expected to have a fake laugh, even if it's not funny. Whereas a man can sit and smile and not react in that way, and they won't be seen as sullen, and they won't be seen as a rude, profanity-laden word relating to women. You behave differently at work, and also you get certain responsibilities that male clerks don't get. Collecting mail, collecting dry cleaning.
Alice says women still need our pollies to stick up for them.
I think we really do, and I think we need them sticking up for women in the way she has, which was completely unhindered by, well, I have to maintain this veneer of almost a male paradigm of what a leader should be.
And Elise reckons mentoring programs like the Rural Women's Award help, but practical changes in the way business works are just as important.
With the rise of foreign investment into agriculture and more corporate-based businesses, there has been a rise in management positions and women in leadership positions. So I think that rise in women in agriculture has been due to our skills and due to our ability to lead well.
That was Loretta Florence reporting there, and we got quite a big response on Facebook and Twitter to us today. Kylie says, personally, no, I don't think it's a big issue. We've come a long way. However, I think it depends on your environment and who you're surrounded by. Lucy says, yes, I experience it probably every day. Erin, of course it does. The place is dripping with it. And Joel says, no one gets discriminated against like a healthy white male. Companies are encouraged to hire people because there are women or different races that need to be hired, and they leave more qualified white males out. Kelly, what do you think? Are white males the ones who are suffering here?
Well, look, I think there are a lot of really interesting perspectives that we heard, and each person brings their own perspective to this debate, I suppose. Look, from my own perspective, do I think sometimes some discrimination exists, in different workplaces? Yes, probably it does. And sexism does exist. And I think, we need to be very, very clear that we call out true sexism. We don't sort of belittle the experience when it is there. But where it's part of an orchestrated campaign, as part of a political campaign, that's where I really, have a different perspective, which is that I think it's quite wrong to sort of manufacture a lot of examples here, which really, frankly, most people would see as robust debate.
Gay, we had, these are not manufactured comments. Yes, I'm all for robust debate. I'm all for robust debate on policy and the way that this country should be run and the future of this country. I am not for a robust debate about someone's gender.
Well, I'm going to go to Amy here. Amy, what do you think? Is sexism still alive and well in Australia today?
Well, basically, it shouldn't be. I don't believe it is. I don't feel like I've been discriminated against based on my gender. Perhaps age might be a factor in discrimination these days, but not so much sex.
That's a good point. Let's put that to the ladies. What do you guys think? Do younger women have it easier? Maybe the Triple J listeners don't sympathise with the Labor Party's plight, Gay, because they feel like, well, it's not as bad for our generation. Maybe it'll backfire for you guys. What do you reckon?
Well, I mean, the thing is, it does exist. They may not be experiencing it at the moment, but it does exist. I mean, I just think the double standard is definitely there. The fact that people are always commenting on the Prime Minister's hair or what she's wearing. We get it. I get it myself. I'm sure Kelly gets it. Most female politicians do. There is a subliminal sexism that exists in Australian society. Things like men talking over you when you're making a point.
Women, I'm pretty good at that too.
Yeah, okay. Things like men not consulting with you on particular issues, or when you're chairing a meeting, they sort of take over. So there's all sorts of overt and subliminal.
Well, I'm going to go to Chris here, guys. Sorry to talk over you. Okay, Chris, what do you reckon?
I reckon that it's a bit of a stupid question to ask, to be honest, and because I think whenever you put any sex in the same room together, men, women, you put different races in the same room, of course you're going to find that people are going to have, discriminate against one another or have a certain amount of dislike or even hatred against one another. And I think that in this day and age, as a young woman, I'm in my mid-20s, I think absolutely you can still notice it, but it's just, at the moment, unfortunately, it's just the reality of the society we live in, and I think that will always be the case, because I think it's human nature for us as humans to challenge one another and to be frightened of things that you're not.
What about putting this into real life? What can actually change? At the moment, women are still paid on average 17% less than men. Is that something you'd prefer the government to be arguing about, perhaps, Chris, than all the kind of bitching that's been going on in Parliament this week?
Look, I think I really liked Julia Gillard's speech, and I think Steve earlier said the same thing. He watched it again and again, and I just think it's rare that you hear women really stand up for themselves. And I know that a couple of the other people you have on your show right now, they are sort of saying, I don't think it was right for her to have done this, and I think, it was misplaced in Parliament. I disagree. she needs to be able to say that if that's the way she feels. And she was so severely attacked in this last week. I think that, and in recent months in general.
Chris, thanks so much for the call. I want to put one last question to Gay. We don't have much time left, but Gay, you're the one who's in the government. Women are paid 17% less than men. What are you guys doing about it?
Well, the equal pay case that was just recently finalised, and we're 150,000 workers in low-paid work, and 120,000 of those are women. So that's one example. We've introduced a range of measures to try and even it up. But